Hello everyone, and welcome back to another video from Gone Legends. In today's video, we'll be highlighting American celebrities who passed away today, and in recent days, along with other notable individuals from around the world. Before we proceed, we kindly ask for your support. If you find these tributes meaningful, please take a moment to like this video. It truly means a lot to us. Thank you for being here. And now, let's begin. 1.
Bud Cort passed away on February 11, 2026, at the age of 77 due to complications from pneumonia. Pneumonia, an infection that inflames the air sacs in one or both lungs, can become especially dangerous in older adults, leading to respiratory failure when the body can no longer absorb enough oxygen. Born in 1948 in Rye, New York, Bud Cort, born Walter Edward Cox, became an unforgettable presence in American cinema. He rose to fame in the early 1970s with his haunting and deeply unconventional performance as Harold in the cult classic Harold and Maude. The film, initially overlooked, grew into a cultural landmark, and Cort's portrayal of a lonely young man obsessed with death became iconic for its vulnerability and dark humor. Throughout his career, he worked in film, television, and voice acting, collaborating with respected directors and carving out a niche as a performer drawn to unusual, introspective characters. Though he never chased mainstream superstardom, his artistry earned lasting admiration. His passing marked the loss of a singular talent whose quiet intensity left a permanent imprint on American film history.
2.
James Van Der Beek. James Van Der Beek passed away on February 11, 2026, at the age of 48 after a courageous battle with stage 3 colorectal cancer. The illness, which he had publicly revealed in 2023, gradually advanced despite aggressive treatment that included surgery and chemotherapy. Colorectal cancer often develops silently, with symptoms that can be overlooked until the disease has progressed. In Van Der Beek's case, the fight was long and deeply personal, as he continued to prioritize his family while undergoing treatment. Born in 1977 in the United States, he rose to international fame as Dawson Leary in the hit television series Dawson's Creek. His portrayal of an earnest, sensitive teenager defined a generation of late 1990s television. Beyond that iconic role, he appeared in films such as Varsity Blues and demonstrated remarkable self-awareness in later comedic performances that playfully referenced his early fame. Off-screen, he was known as a devoted husband and father of 6, often speaking about faith, resilience, and personal growth. His passing left behind not just a body of work, but a memory of sincerity in an industry that often rewards cynicism. James Van Der Beek's legacy lives on in the emotional honesty he brought to his characters and in the quiet strength he showed during his final chapter.
3.
Jerry Kennedy. Jerry Kennedy died on February 11, 2026 at the age of 85. Though specific medical details surrounding his passing were not widely disclosed, reports confirmed his death marked the end of a monumental chapter in American country music history. Born in 1940 in the United States, Jerry Glenn Kennedy became one of Nashville's most influential record producers and session guitarists. Before stepping into production leadership, he was already known as a first-call guitarist, shaping the sound of countless hit records with his precise, melodic playing. His work helped define the Nashville sound and influenced generations of musicians. Kennedy eventually served in executive roles at major record labels, guiding artists and shaping careers from behind the scenes. Unlike performers who stand in the spotlight, Kennedy built legacies quietly, ensuring songs resonated deeply with audiences. His fingerprints remain on classic recordings that continue to define American country and rock music. With his passing, the music world lost not only a producer but an architect of sound, whose influence will echo through every chord and lyric he helped bring to life.
4.
Jung Yoon-woo. Jung Yoon-woo passed away suddenly on February 11, 2006 at the age of 39. The official cause of death was not publicly disclosed, leaving fans in shock and sorrow as news of his unexpected passing spread across South Korea and beyond. Sudden deaths often carry a deeper emotional weight because they arrive without warning, interrupting plans, dreams, and ongoing projects. Born in 1986 in South Korea, Jung Yoon-woo built his acting career steadily through television dramas, earning recognition for his performances in series such as One Well-Raised Daughter and The Return of Hwang Jung-bak. He was known for portraying emotionally complex characters with sincerity and depth. In an industry known for its intensity and competition, he maintained a reputation for professionalism and dedication. Fans often described him as warm and humble, a performer who connected naturally with audiences. His untimely death cut short a career that still held immense promise. Though the circumstances remain private, his work continues to stream in homes across Asia, preserving his presence through the characters he brought to life.
5.
Michael Proctor. Michael Proctor died on February 12, 2026 at the age of 58. While public reports confirmed his passing, detailed medical information regarding the cause of death was not consistently disclosed. Born in 1967 in the United States, Proctor was best known as a talented quarterback who made his mark at Murray State University before advancing to professional football. At Murray State, he set school records and became one of the most celebrated players in the program's history, earning induction into the university's Hall of Fame. His leadership on the field and strong arm made him a standout during his college years. Proctor later played professionally, including time associated with the New England Patriots and other leagues. Though he did not achieve long-term NFL stardom, his impact at the collegiate level secured his legacy. Teammates and fans remembered him as disciplined, focused, and resilient. His passing at 58 fell premature to many who admired his athletic achievements and the determination he showed throughout his football career.
6.
Bojina Daikil passed away on February 12, 2026, at the age of 77. Although the specific cause of death was not widely disclosed, Polish media confirmed her passing and mourned the loss of one of the country's most distinguished actresses. Born in 1948 in Poland, Daikil built a celebrated career across theater, film, and television. She was admired for her commanding stage presence and ability to portray emotionally layered characters. Over the years, she became a household name in Polish entertainment, appearing in numerous productions that shaped the nation's cultural landscape. Her performances often balanced strength and vulnerability, earning her critical praise and loyal audiences. Beyond awards and accolades, she was respected for her professionalism and dedication to the performing arts. With her passing, Poland lost not only a veteran actress but also a cultural figure whose contributions helped define decades of storytelling. Her legacy continues through the memorable roles she brought to life on stage and screen.
7.
Vanji Labalan died on February 12, 2026 at the age of 83 after battling an illness that had reportedly required hospitalization in her final days. While specific medical details were not publicly detailed, her passing followed a period of declining health. Born in 1942 in the Philippines, Vanji Labalan became one of the country's most respected actresses, known for her work in both mainstream cinema and critically acclaimed films such as Manila by Night and Himala. Her career spanned decades, and she earned recognition for portraying strong, complex women who reflected the realities of Filipino society. Beyond dramatic roles, she also displayed a remarkable talent for comedy, becoming a familiar and beloved face on television. Labalan's performances often carried emotional authenticity, connecting deeply with audiences across generations. Her death prompted tributes from fellow actors and fans who remembered her dedication to craft and cultural contribution. She leaves behind a body of work that remains central to Philippine film history.
8.
John Shirefs died on February 12, 2026, at the age of 80, reportedly passing peacefully in his sleep following health challenges associated with age-related illness. Born in 1945 in the United States, Shirefs became one of the most respected thoroughbred horse trainers in American racing history. He gained national recognition for training Giacomo, winner of the 2005 Kentucky Derby, and later achieved worldwide fame with Zenyatta, one of the greatest racehorses of all time. Known for his patient and compassionate approach, Shirefs emphasized careful preparation and the well-being of his horses over aggressive competition. His calm demeanor and integrity earned him admiration within the racing community. Over decades, he accumulated numerous graded stakes victories and established himself as a trainer who valued trust between horse and human above all else. His passing marked the end of a remarkable era in horse racing. John Shirefs leaves behind a legacy of excellence, sportsmanship, and devotion to the animals that defined his life's work.
9.
Tracy Scroggins. Tracy Scroggins passed away on February 9, 2006, at the age of 56. Following his death, his family publicly expressed concerns that chronic traumatic encephalopathy, commonly known as ET, may have contributed. ET is a degenerative brain disease associated with repeated head trauma, often seen in former football players. Though it can only be definitively diagnosed after death, symptoms may include mood changes, memory loss, and cognitive decline. Born in 1969 in the United States, Scroggins built a respected career as a defensive end and linebacker for the Detroit Lions, playing 10 seasons in the National Football League. Drafted in 1992, he became one of the team's most consistent defensive players, recording numerous sacks and earning the respect of teammates and fans alike. Known for his relentless playing style and physical toughness, he represented the grit of professional football in the 1990s. His death reignited conversations about player safety and the long-term health effects of the sport. Tracy Scroggins leaves behind both a strong athletic legacy and a reminder of the sacrifices many players make in pursuit of the game they love.
10.
In 2001, the world watched as one of Hollywood's most powerful marriages collapsed. Nicole Kidman and Tom Cruise had been together for more than a decade. To audiences across the globe, they were untouchable, two cinematic forces united in glamour and influence. They had built a family together. They had adopted 2 children. They had created what appeared to be a perfectly constructed life, but perfection is often an illusion polished for cameras. When the marriage ended, it ended abruptly. There was no gradual fading, no slow unraveling. It was sudden, decisive, and final. For Nicole, the emotional ground shifted beneath her feet. She was in her early 30s, having spent much of her adult life within that partnership. The identity she had built around love and family fractured overnight. And unlike ordinary heartbreak, this was heartbreak magnified. Every expression she wore became subject to interpretation. Every photograph became a headline. Every silence was filled with speculation. One image in particular became symbolic. After signing divorce papers, she was photographed outside her lawyer's office, arms lifted toward the sky. Some saw triumph in that gesture, a woman reclaiming her independence. Others saw exhaustion, perhaps even disbelief. What the world could not see was the complexity beneath that single frame. Freedom and grief often exist in the same breath. Liberation can arrive carrying sorrow. Behind the scenes, she faced not only the emotional pain of separation, but also the difficulty of navigating family dynamics under intense scrutiny. The separation from her children during certain periods of that transition weighed heavily on her. There are wounds that do not bleed outwardly, but leave deep impressions within the heart. For a woman who valued loyalty and connection above ambition, the experience was disorienting. But this was not the first time life had tested her resilience. Years earlier, when she was still a teenager with dreams larger than her experience, her mother was diagnosed with breast cancer. At an age when most young people are discovering independence, Nicole stepped into responsibility. She paused her growing acting momentum to care for her family. She trained as a massage therapist to help her mother through recovery. Hospital rooms replaced rehearsal studios. Fear replaced youthful certainty. In those sterile corridors and quiet waiting rooms, she learned something far more valuable than technique. She learned endurance. She learned that strength is often silent. She witnessed vulnerability firsthand, not scripted vulnerability, but real human fragility. That experience would later echo through her performances, giving them authenticity that could never be manufactured. Then came another devastating blow decades later. In 2014, her father, Anthony Kidman, passed away unexpectedly after suffering a heart attack while visiting Singapore. He had been more than a parent. He was a scholar, a psychologist, a man deeply invested in understanding the complexities of human emotion. His influence shaped Nicole's intellectual curiosity and perhaps even her fascination with layered characters. Losing him was not simply losing family, it was losing an anchor. Grief does not move in straight lines. It arrives in waves. In ordinary moments, a memory triggered by a phrase, a familiar tone of voice, a silence at the dinner table. Nicole described the loss as destabilizing, as though a foundational piece of her world had been removed. Even as she stood on red carpets and accepted accolades, she carried that absence within her, and while personal losses marked her private life, professional uncertainty shadowed her career. After her divorce, critics whispered. Industry insiders questioned whether she would maintain her position independently. There is a particular scrutiny reserved for women in Hollywood, especially those navigating life after a highly publicized marriage. Offers slowed. Narratives shifted. The conversation subtly changed from admiration to skepticism. Would she endure, or would she fade? The entertainment industry can be unforgiving, especially toward women who step beyond conventional expectations. Nicole faced not only the usual pressures of performance, but the added weight of proving that her success belonged solely to her. Yet beneath all of this, she had always carried a quiet insecurity rooted in childhood. As a young girl growing up in Australia, she battled shyness and a stutter. She felt awkward in her height, uncertain in her presence. Acting became a refuge long before it became a profession. It was where she discovered her voice literally and emotionally. When she stepped into another character, she felt fearless. So when her life fractured through heartbreak, bereavement, and doubt, she returned to that refuge. There was also another sorrow she endured, largely in silence, the heartbreak of miscarriage. Before welcoming children later in her life, she experienced the quiet devastation of pregnancy loss. It is a grief that often goes unspoken, particularly under public scrutiny. For Nicole, it was deeply personal. The longing for motherhood intertwined with disappointment, and yet she rarely allowed the world to see that vulnerability in real time. These cumulative experiences reshaped her artistry. Pain expanded her emotional depth. Loss sharpened her empathy. Heartbreak refined her sensitivity. When audiences later witnessed her portray women grappling with mental illness, domestic violence, or unimaginable grief, they were not watching detached performance. They were witnessing interpretation informed by lived understanding. Her life has never followed a straight, effortless trajectory toward acclaim. It has been marked by turbulence, public and private, sudden and prolonged. But what defines her story is not the suffering itself. It is the refusal to be consumed by it. In an industry that often confines women to limited roles, she sought complexity. In moments when the spotlight felt harsh and unforgiving, she used it as illumination rather than exposure. The brilliance people see today was not born from ease. It was forged in seasons of uncertainty. The elegance the world admires is supported by endurance. And the vulnerability that defines her greatest performances was cultivated long before audiences recognized it. This is not the story of a woman who lived untouched by hardship. It is the story of someone who walked through it, absorbed it, and emerged not hardened but deepened. And this is only the beginning. Long before the world learned to pronounce her name with admiration, long before cameras followed her every movement, Nicole Mary Kidman was simply a sensitive, tall, red-haired girl growing up under the vast Australian sky. Her story did not begin in luxury or cinematic grandeur. It began in a household shaped by intellect, activism, discipline, and deep emotional awareness. Though she was born on June 20, 1967, in Honolulu, Hawaii, where her father was temporarily working as a visiting scholar, her identity was unmistakably Australian. When she was just 4 years old, her family returned to Sydney, and it was there, among the coastal breezes and suburban streets, that her childhood unfolded. Her father, Dr. Anthony Kidman, was a respected biochemist and clinical psychologist. Her mother, Janelle Kidman, was a nursing instructor and a passionate advocate for women's rights. Their home was not centered around celebrity dreams or artistic fantasy. It was a home of books, ideas, and discussion. Dinner conversations revolved around social issues, psychology, equality, and education. Nicole grew up listening more than speaking, absorbing the rhythms of thoughtful dialogue. As a child, she was painfully shy. She struggled with a stutter, which made her hesitant to speak in public settings. She often felt self-conscious about her height, towering over classmates long before she reached adulthood. There is a particular loneliness that can accompany feeling different, and Nicole experienced that early. But within that sensitivity was something powerful, a vivid inner world. She found refuge in imagination. Dance became her first language of expression. Ballet lessons offered structure and discipline, but more importantly, they allowed her to communicate without words. Through movement, she could tell stories. Through posture and gesture, she could transform insecurity into grace. That early training instilled a physical awareness that would later define her presence on screen. But it was theater that truly changed her life. At school, she began participating in drama classes, and something extraordinary happened. The shy girl who hesitated to speak discovered that when she stepped into someone else's character, her fear dissolved, the stutter disappeared. Confidence replaced hesitation. Acting was not simply performance, it was liberation. Her parents recognized that spark and supported it, though always grounding her in education and discipline. She attended the Australian Theatre for Young People, where her talent quickly became evident. Teachers noticed her commitment, her intensity, the way she immersed herself entirely in a role. Even as a teenager, she approached acting not as play, but as craft. Then life interrupted her momentum. When her mother was diagnosed with breast cancer, Nicole was still very young. The diagnosis changed everything. Instead of focusing solely on auditions and rehearsals, she shifted into caregiver mode. She trained as a massage therapist to help her mother manage the side effects of treatment. She became emotionally present in a way that few teenagers are required to be. Those years matured her rapidly. While peers worried about social gatherings and youthful distractions, Nicole was learning about mortality, fragility, and resilience. She watched her mother confront fear with dignity. She witnessed vulnerability not as weakness but as courage. These experiences quietly deepened her emotional range. When her mother recovered, Nicole returned to her artistic ambitions with renewed seriousness. There was no illusion now about how unpredictable life could be. She understood that opportunities should not be taken for granted. Her professional career began in Australian television in the early 1980s. Small roles at first, guest appearances, projects that required long hours and modest budgets. But even in those early performances, something set her apart. She had a stillness that commanded attention. She listened deeply on screen, reacting with authenticity rather than exaggeration. In 1983, she appeared in the Australian holiday film Bush Christmas. It was not a global sensation, but it marked the beginning. Soon after, she gained recognition in the television miniseries Vietnam, where she portrayed a young woman navigating the emotional turbulence of war's impact. The role earned her critical praise within Australia and signaled that she was not merely another aspiring actress, she was serious, capable, and emotionally nuanced. By the late 1980s, she had become a rising talent in her home country. Yet Australia, for all its beauty, offered limited scope for the scale of ambition quietly building inside her. Hollywood loomed on the horizon not as a guarantee, but as possibility. Her international breakthrough arrived in 1989 with the thriller Dead Calm. The film placed her on a yacht, stranded at sea with a man descending into madness. It required vulnerability, physical endurance, and psychological intensity. Nicole delivered all three. Audiences were captivated by her ability to project both fragility and fierce intelligence simultaneously. Hollywood noticed, but Nicole approached the move with the same discipline that had defined her from childhood. In 1990, she starred opposite Tom Cruise in Days of Thunder. The film was high-profile, glossy, commercially ambitious. On set, chemistry between the two actors sparked not only on screen but in real life. Their relationship quickly became one of the most talked-about romances in entertainment history. For Nicole, it marked the beginning of a new chapter both professionally and personally. Yet beneath the glamour of that ascent, she remained grounded in the values instilled during her upbringing. She carried with her the memory of hospital rooms, the discipline of ballet studios, the intellectual curiosity of her father's discussions, and the resilience forged during her mother's illness. Her early life was not defined by privilege or effortless advantage. It was shaped by responsibility, introspection, and determination. Acting was not a shortcut to fame. It was an escape from insecurity, a tool for self-discovery, and eventually, a calling. The young girl who once struggled to speak in class was now standing before cameras, projecting confidence to millions. But the transformation was not superficial. It was built on years of quiet preparation. Every role she accepted became another layer of growth. Every challenge became another lesson in endurance. And as the 1990s unfolded, Nicole Kidman was no longer just a promising actress from Australia. She was becoming a global presence, but with greater visibility came greater scrutiny. And the next phase of her life would test her in ways she could never have anticipated. The 1990s did not arrive quietly for Nicole Kidman. They came with flashing cameras, towering billboards, and a level of visibility that few actors ever experience in a lifetime. By the time she stepped fully into Hollywood, she was no longer simply a promising Australian actress. She was part of a power couple that dominated magazine covers, red carpets, and the global imagination. After Days of Thunder, Nicole and Tom Cruise married in December 1990. She was only 23 years old. Suddenly, her life accelerated at a pace that left little room for stillness. Interviews multiplied. Public appearances became constant. Every smile, every dress, every glance was documented. Their marriage symbolized glamour, influence, and cinematic royalty. Yet inside that whirlwind, Nicole was still discovering who she was as an individual artist. Throughout the early and mid-1990s, she worked steadily, determined not to be overshadowed by her husband's enormous box office presence. Films like Far and Away reunited them on screen, offering sweeping romance and epic scale. Then came Batman Forever in 1995, where she portrayed Dr. Chase Meridian, bringing elegance and intelligence into a blockbuster universe. Audiences admired her beauty, but critics began to notice something deeper: her ability to project subtle emotional complexity even within large commercial productions. Still, there was an undercurrent of doubt in Hollywood's perception of her. Some whispered that her success was tethered to her marriage. Others questioned whether she possessed the strength to command films independently. The industry can be quietly dismissive of women attached to powerful men. Nicole felt that pressure, even if she rarely spoke about it publicly. Then came a turning point. In 1995, she accepted the role of Suzanne Stone in To Die For. The character was ambitious, manipulative, and chillingly charming, a woman willing to orchestrate murder in pursuit of fame. It was a risky choice. It required shedding the polished image audiences associated with her. Nicole embraced the darkness of the role with fearless precision. She portrayed Suzanne not as a caricature, but as a disturbingly believable human being driven by ego and hunger. The performance stunned critics. It was sharp, layered, and unexpectedly powerful. She won a Golden Globe Award, and for the first time, the industry began to recognize her as a formidable talent in her own right. The whispers quieted. Respect replaced skepticism. Yet even as her professional identity strengthened, her personal life remained under relentless observation. The marriage that once seemed untouchable began to face strains invisible to the public. Balancing two global careers, constant travel, and unending media attention is not a simple equation. Behind the carefully curated photographs were two individuals navigating immense pressure. In 1999, she reunited with Tom Cruise for Stanley Kubrick's Eyes Wide Shut. The film was intense, psychological, and controversial. Kubrick demanded emotional vulnerability and prolonged commitment from both actors. The shoot lasted nearly 2 years, pushing boundaries both professionally and personally. For Nicole, the experience was artistically significant. It required her to explore themes of intimacy, jealousy, and emotional exposure in ways she had never done before. But when the film was released, the marriage was already unraveling. By early 2001, after more than a decade together, they separated. The announcement was abrupt, leaving fans shocked. Nicole later described feeling as though her life had been ripped apart without warning. She was 33 years old, standing at a crossroads, with 2 children and a future suddenly rewritten. The divorce marked not only the end of a relationship, but the beginning of her true artistic rebirth. There is something transformative about loss. It strips away illusion, it demands introspection, and for Nicole it ignited an extraordinary period of creative intensity. In 2001, she starred in Baz Luhrmann's Moulin Rouge, portraying Satine, a courtesan caught between love and ambition in a dazzling, tragic world of music and color. The role required singing, dancing, emotional vulnerability, and physical endurance. She trained tirelessly, even suffering a rib injury during rehearsals. But she refused to withdraw. The performance was luminous and heartbreaking, filled with longing and fragile hope. Audiences were captivated. Critics were overwhelmed. She received her first Academy Award nomination for Best Actress. It felt as though the world was witnessing not just a performance, but a woman reclaiming her narrative through art. Then came 2002. The Hours. In this quiet, introspective film, Nicole transformed herself into Virginia Woolf. She wore a prosthetic nose, shed glamour entirely, and disappeared into the psyche of a writer battling depression and existential despair. The transformation was astonishing. It was not vanity that drove her, it was immersion. She captured Woolf's brilliance and fragility with haunting authenticity. When she won the Academy Award for Best Actress, standing on stage with tears in her eyes, the moment carried layers of meaning. It was more than recognition, it was validation, it was proof that she had not only survived personal upheaval but emerged stronger. Yet even in triumph, she carried scars. She later admitted that during the height of her success, she often felt lonely. Fame does not insulate against isolation. Awards cannot replace intimacy. The applause fades quickly once the curtains close, but she continued. The others, Cold Mountain, Dogville, each project expanded her range. She embraced unconventional roles, independent films, and characters who existed far from comfort zones. She was no longer chasing approval, she was pursuing depth. The industry began to shift its perception of her entirely. She was not merely a movie star. She was an artist willing to risk comfort for truth. However, the next chapter of her life would require healing beyond professional accomplishment, because success alone cannot mend a fractured heart. And in the quiet years that followed, Nicole would seek not just meaningful roles but meaningful connection. After the storm of public heartbreak and the blinding light of Oscar glory, Nicole Kidman entered a quieter, more introspective chapter of her life. The early 2000s had transformed her. She had proven her artistic power. She had reclaimed her independence. But success, no matter how dazzling, cannot replace emotional grounding. Behind the accolades was still a woman who longed for stability, for connection that felt safe rather than scrutinized. In the years following her divorce, Nicole focused intensely on her craft. She worked with directors who challenged her, chose roles that unsettled audiences, and leaned into characters shaped by grief, isolation, and resilience. Films like Birth explored themes of loss and reincarnation. Dogville, directed by Lars von Trier, stripped away traditional cinematic comfort, placing her in a raw, minimalistic setting where emotional cruelty unfolded without visual distraction. It was bold, uncomfortable storytelling. Many actors would have avoided such risk. Nicole stepped directly into it. Her choices reflected something deeper. She was not interested in easy applause. She was drawn to complexity, even when it invited criticism. Some projects divided audiences. Some performances were debated intensely, but she did not retreat. She seemed to understand that longevity in art requires courage, not consensus. Still, privately, there were wounds that time alone could not immediately soften. She had experienced miscarriage earlier in her life, a sorrow she carried with quiet dignity. The longing for motherhood remained profound. Though she had 2 adopted children from her first marriage, the ache of pregnancy loss had shaped her understanding of fragility and hope. It was a pain shared by many women, but rarely discussed openly at the time. Then, in 2005, something unexpected happened. At a charity event in Australia, she met country music singer Keith Urban. Unlike the polished Hollywood circles she had navigated for years, Keith represented something different, grounded, musical, emotionally open. Their connection grew gradually, away from spectacle. For Nicole, this relationship felt calmer, less performative. They married in June 2006 in Sydney, surrounded by family and close friends. It was not a union built on cinematic grandeur, but on shared vulnerability. Yet even this new beginning was tested almost immediately. Shortly after their wedding, Keith entered rehabilitation for substance addiction. It was another moment when Nicole faced uncertainty within love, but this time the story unfolded differently. Instead of collapse, there was commitment. Instead of public unraveling, there was private rebuilding. Nicole stood beside him during treatment, drawing from the resilience she had cultivated throughout her life. She understood that love is not sustained by perfection, but by perseverance. In 2008, she gave birth to their daughter, Sunday Rose Kidman Urban. The moment carried immense emotional weight. After years of longing, heartbreak, and silent hope, she experienced motherhood in a new way. She later described holding her daughter as one of the most grounding experiences of her life. In 2010, through gestational surrogacy, they welcomed their second daughter, Faith Margaret. Motherhood reshaped her priorities. Though she continued working, she became intentional about balancing family and career. She chose projects carefully, often coordinating filming schedules around her children's lives. Unlike earlier years when work consumed her entirely, she now approached it with equilibrium. Professionally, the late 2000s and early 2010s brought both successes and quieter periods. Australia, directed by Baz Luhrmann in 2008, reunited her with sweeping cinematic scale. Though the film received mixed critical response, it reaffirmed her connection to her homeland. She remained deeply tied to Australia, often splitting time between Nashville, where she lived with Keith, and Sydney. Then came Rabbit Hole in 2010, a performance that once again revealed the depth of her emotional reservoir. She portrayed a mother grieving the accidental death of her young son. The film required restraint rather than dramatic display. Grief in Rabbit Hole was not explosive, it was subtle, simmering, internal. Nicole's performance was devastating in its quiet honesty. She received another Academy Award nomination, and critics praised her ability to convey pain without spectacle. It was evident by this stage of her career that Nicole Kidman had entered a rare category of performers, those who evolve rather than fade. Many actors peak early. She seemed to deepen with time. The industry, which once questioned her independence, now regarded her as a pillar of artistic credibility. Younger actresses cited her as inspiration. Directors sought her for roles requiring emotional precision, but perhaps her most culturally impactful reinvention arrived through television. In 2017, she starred in Hebo's Big Little Lies, portraying Celeste Wright, a woman trapped in an abusive marriage. The role demanded unfiltered vulnerability. Scenes depicting domestic violence were difficult to film, emotionally taxing, and painfully realistic. Nicole committed fully. She allowed audiences to witness fear, shame, strength, and survival within a single character. The performance earned her an Emmy Award and a Golden Globe. More importantly, it ignited conversations about domestic abuse, female solidarity, and the complexity of hidden trauma. Nicole did not simply act in the series, she also served as executive producer, actively shaping narratives that centered women's experiences. This marked another transformation. She was no longer just interpreting stories, she was helping create them. With her production company, she committed to adapting novels written by women, championing female-driven narratives, and supporting emerging voices. In an industry historically dominated by male perspectives, Nicole used her influence to shift the landscape. And yet, through all these reinventions, she remained rooted in the lessons of her past. The shy girl who once struggled to speak had become a global icon. The young woman who cared for her sick mother had grown into a fierce advocate for women's health and equality. As a goodwill ambassador for Women, she used her platform to address gender-based violence and systemic inequality. Her life, viewed from a distance, might appear seamless, one achievement flowing into another. But beneath that arc lies a pattern of resilience forged in adversity. Heartbreak did not diminish her. Grief did not silence her. Criticism did not intimidate her. Instead, each challenge refined her. And now, as she continues to evolve in both film and television, Nicole Kidman stands not merely as a celebrated actress, but as a symbol of endurance, proof that reinvention is possible at any stage and that vulnerability can coexist with strength. Yet her story is still unfolding. Because legends are not defined by a single era. They are defined by the ability to rise again and again when life demands transformation. By the time Nicole Kidman entered the later phase of her career, she was no longer simply participating in Hollywood, she was shaping it. There is a distinct difference between a star and a force. A star shines brightly for a time. A force alters the direction of the current, and as the years moved forward, it became clear that Nicole had become the latter. The late 2010s and early 2020s were not a period of slowing down. If anything, they revealed an artist operating at full creative power. While many actors of her generation gradually stepped back from leading roles, she accelerated. She chose projects across genres, psychological thrillers, historical dramas, intimate character studies, each one reinforcing her refusal to be confined by age or expectation. In The Killing of a Sacred Deer, she stepped into unsettling territory once more, embracing a story layered with moral ambiguity and psychological dread. The film was strange, tense, deliberately uncomfortable, yet Nicole's presence grounded it. She never feared complexity. She seemed drawn toward it, as if she understood that true artistry lives in the spaces where audiences feel challenged rather than comforted. Then came Destroyer in 2018, a role that shattered any lingering attachment to glamour. She portrayed a hardened, haunted police detective unraveling under the weight of past mistakes. Her physical transformation was stark. There was no polish, no luminous softness. Instead, there was exhaustion etched into every movement. The performance required vulnerability of a different kind, not emotional fragility, but raw deterioration. Critics described it as fearless. It was another reminder that Nicole Kidman had no interest in protecting an image. She was interested in truth. Television continued to expand her reach. In The Undoing, she embodied a woman confronting betrayal and uncertainty within the polished facade of privilege. The series became one of Hichbo's most watched dramas, further cementing her ability to anchor compelling narratives. She did not simply act within stories, she elevated them. Yet perhaps one of the most significant aspects of this stage in her life was her role behind the scenes. Through her production company, she committed publicly to working with a female director every 18 months, a pledge she successfully fulfilled and exceeded. At a time when representation behind the camera was still uneven, she used her influence strategically. She understood that legacy is not only about performance but about opportunity. Her career longevity became part of the conversation. In an industry that often sidelines women after a certain age, Nicole refused invisibility. She embraced roles that reflected maturity, intelligence, sensuality, and power. She demonstrated that a woman's narrative does not expire; with youth it evolves. Awards continued to follow her. Golden Globes, Emmy recognition, festival honors. But by this stage, accolades felt secondary to impact. What truly distinguished her was consistency, decades of commitment without complacency, and still, through it all, she remained deeply human. She spoke openly about balancing motherhood with filming schedules, about missing school events when production demanded travel, about the constant negotiation between personal presence and professional dedication. She never pretended the balance was effortless. Instead, she acknowledged its complexity. Her marriage to Keith Urban remained steady, built not on spectacle but on mutual support. They appeared together rarely in performative displays, but when they did, it carried authenticity rather than choreography. After years of public scrutiny in her earlier life, Nicole seemed to have found peace and privacy. As the entertainment landscape shifted towards streaming platforms and evolving storytelling formats, she adapted seamlessly. Younger generations discovered her through new projects, while longtime admirers continued to follow her career with admiration. Few actors managed to remain relevant across 4 decades. Nicole Kidman achieved that through reinvention rather than repetition. But beyond the filmography and the awards lies something deeper: cultural influence. She redefined what it meant to be a leading actress. She refused to remain static. She allowed herself to age visibly, gracefully, powerfully. She embraced roles that reflected emotional depth rather than surface appeal. In doing so, she challenged the industry's narrow standards. There is also the quiet imprint of her early life, the intellectual curiosity inherited from her father, the advocacy inspired by her mother. Her humanitarian work with women continued, emphasizing gender equality and the eradication of violence against women. These were not symbolic affiliations, they were extensions of her lived understanding. If we step back and look at the arc of her life, a pattern emerges. A shy child battling insecurity, a young woman pausing ambition to care for her sick mother, an actress navigating global fame and public heartbreak, a daughter grieving the sudden loss of her father, a mother enduring miscarriage and then welcoming children with gratitude, an artist continuously redefining herself rather than settling into comfort. Nicole Kidman's story is not a simple rise to glory, it is a series of evolutions. Each chapter carries a different tone: innocence, turbulence, triumph, introspection, resilience. And perhaps that is why audiences remain drawn to her. Because when she steps into a role, there is history behind her eyes. There is lived experience informing every pause. There is understanding beneath every line of dialogue. She does not perform emotion, she remembers it. Now, decades after her first appearance on Australian television, Nicole Kidman stands as one of the most respected figures in modern cinema. She has bridged continents, genres, and generations. She has faced scrutiny and emerged stronger. She has experienced loss and chosen compassion. Her life reminds us that adversity does not erase potential, it refines it. That reinvention is not betrayal of self, but evolution. That vulnerability can coexist with strength, and that true legends are not defined solely by awards but by endurance. Still surprising audiences, still deepening her craft, her story has not concluded, it continues to unfold with each new role, each new chapter, and perhaps that is the most powerful part of her legacy. She did not allow the darkest moments of her life to write the ending. She used them to shape the narrative, and in doing so, she transformed from a rising actress into something far more enduring: a living legend. There is something remarkable about longevity in an industry built on fleeting attention. Hollywood moves quickly, faces change, trends evolve, audiences shift, And yet, through decades of transformation, Nicole Kidman has remained not only relevant but essential. That endurance is not accidental. It is not luck. It is discipline shaped by experience and resilience refined through adversity. By the 2020s, Nicole had crossed an invisible threshold. She was no longer viewed merely as a leading actress of her era. She had become part of cinema's living history. Directors spoke of her with reverence. Younger performers described studying her performances the way musicians study classical compositions. She had built a career that felt architectural, layered, intentional, and enduring. In projects like Being the Ricardos, where she portrayed Lucille Ball, Nicole stepped into the legacy of another icon. It was a role filled with pressure. Lucille Ball was not just a character, she was an American cultural monument. The scrutiny surrounding the casting was intense. Critics questioned whether Nicole could embody Ball's sharp comedic timing and commanding presence. But once again, she leaned into the challenge rather than retreating from it. Her portrayal was meticulous, controlled, and deeply human. She focused not on imitation, but on interpretation, revealing the vulnerability beneath Lucille Ball's authority. The performance earned her another Academy Award nomination, proving yet again that doubt had never been a reliable predictor of her limits. What defines Nicole Kidman at this stage is not simply her ability to perform, but her refusal to coast on past success. There is no complacency in her career. Each role feels deliberate, as though she is still chasing discovery rather than security. She has said in interviews that fear keeps her alive creatively, that stepping into unfamiliar territory is what prevents stagnation. That philosophy echoes the shy girl who once used acting to overcome a stutter. Growth has always required risk. Outside of film sets, her presence remains composed yet unpretentious. Despite decades of global recognition, she often speaks of herself not as a celebrity, but as a working actor. That distinction matters. It reveals how she sees her craft not as status, but as service to storytelling. Her family life remains largely shielded from public spectacle. She has been deliberate about protecting her daughters from excessive exposure. Having experienced the intensity of media attention during her first marriage, she understands the cost of overexposure. Privacy for her is no longer luxury, it is preservation. There is also a noticeable shift in how she discusses success. Early in her career, awards symbolized validation. Later, they represented resilience. Now, they seem secondary to collaboration. She speaks often about the joy of working with emerging directors, about nurturing creative partnerships, about elevating voices that might otherwise remain unheard. Through her production company, she continues to champion stories centered on women's complexity, narratives that do not flatten female characters into stereotypes. She has become a quiet architect of opportunity, opening doors not through grand declarations, but through consistent action. Looking back at her life chronologically, one might attempt to divide it into clear chapters: childhood, early fame, marriage, divorce, reinvention, maturity. But real life rarely unfolds in neat sections. Instead, it layers. The insecurity of childhood still informs the discipline of adulthood. The grief of losing her father still echoes in moments of reflection. The heartbreak of public separation still influences her insistence on privacy. Nicole Kidman's strength has never been loud. It is not defiant in the traditional sense. It is steady, measured, enduring. There is a quiet confidence that now surrounds her, not the confidence of someone who has avoided hardship, but of someone who has survived it. She has known what it feels like to have her life dissected by strangers. She has known the ache of personal loss. She has experienced professional doubt and public scrutiny, and yet she stands not hardened, but open. That openness is perhaps her greatest artistic asset. When she portrays grief, audiences believe her because she understands it. When she embodies fear, there is authenticity beneath it. When she portrays resilience, it feels earned rather than scripted. The entertainment industry often celebrates youth as its highest currency. Nicole Kidman has subtly rewritten that narrative. She has shown that maturity brings texture, that experience deepens performance, that longevity is its own kind of brilliance. Now, more than 40 years after her first screen appearance, her name carries weight not because of headlines but because of history. She has become a bridge between eras, connecting the grand theatrical storytelling of the past with the psychologically nuanced narratives of today. And still, she continues. New projects emerge, new characters take shape. Each time she appears on screen, there is a sense that she is not repeating herself, but evolving. Perhaps that is the true measure of a legend, not how brightly they shine in a single moment, but how consistently they illuminate over time. Nicole Kidman's life has been marked by contrast, fragility and strength, heartbreak and renewal, doubt and triumph. But through all of it, she has remained guided by something deeply personal, a commitment to authenticity. She once said that acting allows her to explore parts of herself she might never otherwise confront. That statement captures the essence of her journey. Her career has been less about fame and more about exploration of identity, of emotion, of human complexity. And so, as we reflect on her story, we do not see a fairy tale ascent. We see a human life textured, tested, and transformed. A girl who once struggled to speak became a voice heard around the world. A woman who endured public heartbreak rebuilt her foundation with quiet strength. An actress once questioned for her independence became one of the most respected artists of her generation. Her story is not finished, it is ongoing. But what has already been written is enough to understand something profound. Greatness is not defined by the absence of struggle. It is defined by the ability to rise each time struggle arrives. And Nicole Kidman, time and again, has risen. When we speak about Nicole Kidman today, it is easy to list achievements. An Academy Award winner, multiple Golden Globe and Emmy honors, decades of acclaimed performances, a career that has crossed continents and genres. But statistics do not capture essence. Awards cannot explain presence. And presence is what has always set her apart. To understand Nicole Kidman fully, we must step away from the stage lights and examine the quieter spaces of her life, the spaces where no script exists. Despite her global fame, those who have worked with her often describe something unexpected. Discipline, not extravagance, not ego, discipline. She arrives prepared. She studies relentlessly. She asks questions not to impress, but to understand. Directors have spoken of her as an actor who commits entirely, who does not approach a role halfway. When she enters a character, she does so with intellectual curiosity and emotional surrender. That intellectual depth traces back to her father. Growing up in a home shaped by psychology and academia, she learned to examine human behavior beyond surface reactions. When she portrays a woman experiencing trauma, she does not rely solely on visible emotion. She studies the layers beneath it, the defense mechanisms, the subtle shifts in posture, the pauses between sentences. That is why her performances feel inhabited rather than performed. Yet beneath that analytical precision lives a deeply emotional core. Grief altered her. Losing her father in 2014 did not simply create sorrow. It changed her perception of time. She has spoken about how loss sharpens awareness, how it makes moments feel more fragile and precious. That awareness seeps into her interviews now. She explored roles that were physically demanding, emotionally unsettling, and artistically unconventional. It is the behavior of someone who still feels hungry not for fame, but for exploration. There is also the element of vulnerability in how she speaks about motherhood. She does not romanticize it unrealistically. Her daughters have grown up largely shielded from the frenzy that once surrounded their mother's life. Nicole learned from experience that exposure can distort childhood. She made a conscious choice to separate her professional world from her personal sanctuary. That boundary is one of the quiet strengths she developed over time, understanding that protection is not secrecy, but care. In her advocacy work, particularly with women, her commitment feels personal rather than performative. She has spoken about domestic violence statistics not as abstract numbers but as urgent realities. Her portrayal of Celestine, Big Little Lies, was not coincidental in this context. It aligned with her belief that storytelling can illuminate hidden suffering. Nicole Kidman has become a storyteller not only through characters, but through the choices she makes. There is also a noticeable evolution in her relationship with fame. In her 20s, fame arrived suddenly and intensely. In her 30s, it was tested by scandal and scrutiny. In her 40s and 50s, it became something she navigated with steadiness. Now, it seems she treats it almost as background noise, present, but not defining. The entertainment industry often reduces individuals to simplified narratives. The ingenue, the star wife, the divorcee, the comeback story, the veteran. Nicole has lived through all those labels, but she has never remained confined by them. Each time a narrative threatened to define her permanently, she reshaped it through action. What is perhaps most compelling about her story is not the magnitude of her success, but the continuity of her effort. Decades into her career, she still speaks of rehearsals with excitement. She still describes characters as puzzles waiting to be solved. That enthusiasm has not dulled. And when we look at her now standing tall, composed, reflective, we see a woman who has made peace with her own evolution. She is no longer the shy girl trying to find her voice. She is no longer the young bride navigating global attention. She is no longer the woman defined by public heartbreak. She is an artist who has outlived doubt. Her journey reminds us that identity is not static. It shifts with experience. It strengthens through adversity. It matures through loss. Nicole Kidman's life is proof that reinvention does not erase the past. It integrates it. The early insecurity remains part of her empathy. The grief remains part of her depth. The triumph remains part of her confidence. And so, when audiences watch her today, they are not simply watching performance. They are witnessing history layered into presence. She has become something rare in modern cinema, not just admired, but respected across generations. As the years continue to unfold, new roles will arrive. New challenges will emerge, new chapters will be written, but the foundation has already been laid. A foundation built on resilience, on courage, on refusal to retreat. Nicole Kidman's story does not end in tragedy. It does not conclude with a single triumphant moment. It continues steady, evolving, alive. And perhaps that is the most inspiring aspect of all. Because in a world that often rushes toward endings, she remains committed to growth, not fading, not repeating, but rising again and again into whatever comes next. When history eventually pauses to reflect on the era of modern cinema, Nicole Kidman's name will not simply appear as a successful actress. It will stand as a case study in endurance, a portrait of how an artist can survive the machinery of fame without losing the humanity that first inspired her craft. There are performers who burn intensely for a brief period and then vanish into memory. And then there are those who adapt, who evolve, who allow time to deepen rather than diminish them. Nicole belongs to the latter. Her career is not a straight line of uninterrupted triumph. It is a rhythm rising, falling, rebuilding, refining. What makes her journey extraordinary is not perfection, but perseverance. She has faced public heartbreak that could have shattered her identity. She has endured private grief that could have silenced her spirit. She has navigated an industry that often sidelines women as they age, and through it all, she has remained not only present, but powerful. Even now, decades after her debut, she approaches her work with the curiosity of a newcomer and the discipline of a veteran. That combination is rare. It is easy to become complacent after awards and recognition. It is tempting to choose comfort over challenge. Yet Nicole continues to select roles that demand emotional excavation. She once said that she is drawn to characters who frighten her. That statement explains much about her longevity. Fear, for her, is not a signal to retreat. It is an invitation to grow. Beyond film sets and interviews, there is also the quieter influence she carries. Young actresses entering the industry today encounter a landscape slightly more open because women like Nicole insisted on complexity. She demonstrated that female characters could be layered, flawed, ambitious, broken, resilient all at once. She rejected the notion that women must fit into narrow archetypes to remain visible. Her production work amplified that commitment. By championing stories centered on women's voices, she helped shift the narrative focus. She did not wait for change to arrive. She participated in creating it. And yet, for all the public recognition, she still speaks of acting as something intimate. She describes the rehearsal room as sacred. She talks about scripts as living documents. There is reverence in her approach, a reminder that before the awards, before the fame, there was simply a girl discovering freedom in storytelling. That girl never fully disappeared. You can still see her in the intensity with which she listens during interviews, in the thoughtfulness behind her pauses, in the vulnerability she allows herself to display. Time has softened certain edges of her life. The chaos of early fame has given way to measured calm. The divorce that once dominated global headlines became a catalyst for artistic rebirth. The grief of losing her father deepened her empathy. The struggle with fertility reshaped her understanding of motherhood. The scrutiny of aging in Hollywood became an opportunity to redefine what visibility looks like. She did not escape adversity. She absorbed it, transformed it. And now, when audiences watch her on screen, there is an awareness, even if subconscious, that the emotion carries weight because it has been lived. She has become a mirror for resilience, A reminder that reinvention is not betrayal of the past, but an evolution of it. At 50, and now beyond, she continues to take on projects that stretch her range. She stands as proof that creative vitality does not diminish with age. It matures, it gains nuance. Nicole Kidman's story remains unfinished. That is part of its beauty. There are still performances yet to astonish us, still risks yet to be taken, still chapters yet to be written. But what has already unfolded is enough to leave an imprint on cinematic history. From a shy Australian girl battling a stutter to a global icon who commands international stages, from public heartbreak to personal renewal, from doubt to distinction, her journey carries a message that extends far beyond Hollywood. Strength is not loud, resilience is not glamorous, growth is not linear, and legends are not born in ease, they are forged in challenge. Nicole Kidman stands today not simply as an actress, but as a testament to endurance. Her life reminds us that vulnerability can coexist with power, that grief can deepen compassion, that failure can precede brilliance, and that no matter how dark the season, there is always the possibility of renewal. The cameras will continue to roll, the roles will continue to evolve, and somewhere, before stepping into the light once more, she will steady her breath the same way she did as a young girl discovering her voice. Only now, the world listens differently, because she is no longer just speaking. She is echoing through generations, and that is the mark of a true legend. When we look at Nicole Kidman today, it is tempting to see only the finished portrait, the accomplished actress, the award winner, the cultural figure whose name carries authority. But no human being is a finished portrait. There are always unseen brushstrokes, always unfinished edges, always private reflections that never reach the stage. And that is perhaps the most powerful truth about her journey. Despite the magnitude of her fame, she has never stopped being deeply human. Behind every premiere gown and carefully lit photograph is a woman who has known fear, who has experienced doubt before walking onto set, who has questioned herself in quiet rooms long after applause faded. The difference is not that she avoided vulnerability, it is that she learned how to stand beside it without collapsing. Her life has unfolded across continents, from Honolulu to Sydney, from Los Angeles to Nashville, yet she has carried with her the imprint of her upbringing. Australia remains woven into her identity. She speaks often of its landscape, its openness, its grounding simplicity. No matter how global her career became, that connection to origin never disappeared. In many ways, her story is one of duality, public visibility and private preservation, grandeur and humility, fragility and fortitude. She has navigated red carpets attended by thousands, yet she treasures the ordinary rituals of home family dinners, quiet mornings, laughter without cameras. After experiencing the invasive glare of media during the most turbulent period of her life, she learned the necessity of boundaries. Instead of retreating from visibility, she expanded it, proving that presence does not fade with time, it transforms. This transformation is visible not only in her performances, but in her demeanor. Early interviews reveal a young woman carefully navigating questions. Later conversations show reflection, steadiness, perspective. Time has not diminished her, it has clarified her. Her partnership with Keith Urban represents another quiet triumph. After living through a marriage dissected publicly, she chose a relationship built on privacy and mutual respect. She has inhabited joy and despair with equal conviction. But perhaps her most significant performance is the life she has built beyond the screen, a life that integrates ambition with devotion, artistry with advocacy. When she speaks about young women entering the industry, there is encouragement rather than competition. When she discusses social issues, there is sincerity rather than obligation. These qualities are not scripted. They are extensions of lived experience. Nicole Kidman's journey illustrates something profound about resilience. Resilience is not the absence of breakdown, it is the decision to rebuild. She has rebuilt more than once, after personal loss, after public scrutiny, after moments when the narrative seemed to slip beyond her control. Each time she returned not with vengeance, but with dedication. Dedication to craft, to family, to growth.